What's up guys, it's your boy Garbins, and today we're talking about that I am a Hexer video, but we're talking about the build guide today. So as you guys know, every time I make a I am a video of some sort, I always have to do a build guide afterwards, kind of detailing what I'm doing with this build, why I'm doing it, what gear you should be wearing, and all that good stuff in order for you to be successful with this build. So for starters, doing a hex build slash all dark magic build is a little bit weird. Now the reason it's weird is because all dark magic is spread across all type of casting types. So you've got dark miracles, dark pyromancies, and dark sorceries. Now this is both an awesome part of this build and an awful part of this build, because unfortunately there's not that great of ring synergy as there is for other casting types. For example, pyromancy, you have the great swamp ring and witch's ring. Sorcery, you have the dragon rings, and so on. Whereas with dark magic, you have to unfortunately split these rings up, making one of your cast types better than the other, because unfortunately it's hard to focus on one school of casting with dark magic. Now I will go ahead and say that this build is optimal for PvP. It's a lot of fun in PvP actually, and probably not so great for PvE. I noticed that I was, doing subpar damage just because dark magic doesn't actually deal too much damage to most enemies in game, because everything seems to have a dark resistance. But just like any other type of casting, each type of casting has its own play style to it, and dark magic was a lot of fun. It's probably one of my favorites for sure. But we'll get into detail as to why in a little bit here. So as per usual, let's start off with the stats. I'm soul level 115 in New Game Plus, and I've got my Vigor at 20, Attunement at 40, Endurance 20, Vitality 10, Strength 12, Dexterity 15, Intelligence 40, Faith 40, and Luck at 7. And the starting class is a Pyromancer. Now some of you guys are going to wonder if hollowing does any extra damage for dark magic. The only reason I'm hollowed up right now is for the hollow ending. So being hollow will actually not help you whatsoever with this build. Now a lot of people have been arguing what the cap for dark magic is. Some people say 35 or 30-30 for Intelligence Faith, 40-40 for Intelligence Faith. But Holiday for Hire went and confirmed that the soft cap for this stuff is good up until 45-45. But also stated that having your Intelligence and Faith at 40-40 is probably a good place to stop. If I was to put the extra 10 points into my build, I'd probably move 5 points from Vigor and 5 points from Endurance into my Intelligence and Faith to get that 45-45, but people hate the fact that I do that for whatever reason, so keeping it at 40-40 is probably pretty ideal for me, to be honest. Now I've said this multiple times, and I know I'm going to have to reiterate it again in this build guide, but my attunement is at 40, and that is a personal choice. That is totally up to you if you want to take your attunement that far. You can make your attunement 30 and then have like a Dark Moon Blade ring on or something to get the extra 2 attunement slots. Or you can go right to 40 for attunement just like I do and get quite a few attunement slots. It's completely up to you if you want to put 40 into attunement. Do whatever you feel is appropriate for the way you play and your appropriate build. Otherwise, I like my attunement at 40, I like my Vigor at 20, and I like my Endurance at 20 as well. Once again, completely up to you guys where you want to allocate your stat points. The big thing with this build is you want to focus on 40 Intelligence and 40 Faith, or 45 Intelligence and 45 Faith for cap dark magic damage, because that is the soft cap for dark magic. Of course, there is hard caps, which go all the way to 99, but the soft cap for dark magic is similar to pyromancy, where it's either 40-40 or 45-45. So next, let's talk about the gear. I've got my Sunless Talisman +4 on right now, and the reason that I use the Sunless Talisman is because it scales with Intelligence and Faith, making it optimal for dark magic, aka dark miracles, to be more specific. It even says directly in the description, scales with Intelligence, which is rare for a miracle catalyst, but makes it compatible with dark. In the Sunless Realms, this fact is related first as an initial warning. And then I've got a Pyromancy Flame +10 on my offhand right hand, but the reason I have this is because there's a lot of dark magic, of course, in Pyromancy, and you don't want to use any other catalyst except for Pyromancy Flame to do optimal damage with Black Flame, Black Fire Orb, stuff like that. If you use like the White Hair Talisman or something like that, you're not going to deal nearly as much damage as you can be putting out. And then on the left hand, I have my Isolus Staff +4. So once again, another thing that scales off Intelligence and Faith, making it optimal for dark sorceries. It even says, once again in the description, with the birth of the Chaos Flame, the Flame Witches were at once both sorcerers and shamans. Faith adjusts the power of sorceries cast using this catalyst, and the staff also seems to boost the power of dark sorceries. Now a lot of you guys are also asking me why I'm not using Caith's Chime. You can run Caith's Chime for more optimal damage, but having Unfaltering Prayer for things like the Life Hunt Scythe and stuff like that with this build is fantastic. All talismans have Unfaltering Prayer, and Chimes don't have that same hyper armor weapon skill. Instead, they usually have something that regenerates your health over a period of time. The only exception to that is White Hair Talisman, which allows you to use Combustion, which is just a smaller version of Great Combustion. Now the reason I have this particular setup is because I like having my Isolus staff in my left hand so I can use my casting and whatnot, and I can have Steady Chant ready. And then when I two-hand the Life Hunt Scythe, that's when I can use the weapon skill and use things like Life Hunt Scythe with Unfaltering Prayer. Really good for that hyper armor, for getting those last hits in. Life Hunt Scythe is awesome for that. But you guys can switch up the hands depending on what you think you're going to be doing the most with your weapon skills. Personally, this is just how I play. Now for my aesthetic gear, I'm wearing Carla's Pointed Hat, Jailer Robe, Cornix's Wrap, and Carla's Trousers. Something to note though is that if you're using Dark Sorcery, it will scale off Crown of Dusk if you want to put Crown of Dusk on. I just wanted to have some Fashion Souls going for this build, and I used Crown of Dusk in my last build, which is the Sorcerer build, so I felt like I needed a bit of a switch up. But Crown of Dusk will make your sorceries that much better if they are Dark Sorceries. Now, of course, that being said, the Scholar's Candlestick will also do the exact same thing and will enhance your sorceries as well if there are Dark Sorceries, because it has a strengthening effect on all sorceries, including Dark. So if you want optimal damage in this build, you'd go Scholar's Candlestick, Crown of Dusk, similar to how you would with a Sorcerer build. Now let's talk about the rings. So I have Bellowing Dragoncrest Ring, Ring of the Sun's Firstborn, Sage Ring, and Dark Clutch Ring on right now. I always say the Clutch Ring is completely optional. Many people have reported that it's not as effective in PvP as it used to be, or as other rings might be, so use this at your own discretion. I just think with Dark Magic, any way you can make optimal damage output happen, it's probably pretty ideal. But a lot of people are saying it's probably not worth it for this type of build, so switch it up with anything you want. You can use, Dusk Crown Ring, Red Tearstone Ring, Lloyd's Sword Ring, something like that if you want to. Now the harder part is deciding which rings you should be using with this build. If you guys are using two different schools of spell casting in this build, then you have to have the Greatly Boosts ring for both types that you plan on casting. So because I'm using Life Hunt Scythe, Doris's Gnawing, Deep Protection, any other miracles realistically besides Life Hunt Scythe, I have Ring of the Sun's Firstborn equipped. And because I'm mostly using deep spells, dark magic, and things like Affinity, I have the Bellowing Dragoncrest Ring on. Now, if you had less attunement and we're only going with, let's say, just Dark Sorceries, you can equip both the Dragoncrest Rings to get max damage on your sorceries, of course. Or if you're using, for example, Dark Magic Sorceries and Dark Pyromancies, then you'd go Bellowing Dragoncrest Ring and Witch's Ring to have optimal damage for both Dark Magic types. Now, of course, I always say that Sage's Ring is essential unless you are making a pure Dexterity build of some sort. Having the virtual cast time at the cap casting time with 15 Dexterity is very crucial in any type of caster build. So for anyone that doesn't know, Dexterity at 15 plus the Sage's Ring gets you cap casting speed. So really it's pretty ideal for any casting build. So now we're going to talk about the spells that you're going to be using in a Hexer build / dark magic build. So the first one I'm going to show you guys is Affinity, and Affinity is going to be your favorite weapon. The Hexer build is a very combo heavy build, so you want to pretty much combo everything with Affinity being your opening move. So using Steady Chant, Affinity to bring up those bulbs, and hitting enemies with that is going to hit things for quite a bit of damage. As you can see there, I'm dealing 704 with Dark Clutch and all the gear that I just showed you guys, and it's actually pretty sweet. Affinity has slow tracking, but it does track very, very well. Heavily homing missiles, more homing and less speed than, of course, like your basic crystal archetype of the similar spell. But it does a significant amount of dark damage, and it looks really cool. And once again, it's probably going to be your opening move for every PvP combat scenario. Like I said, guys, this build is very combo heavy as far as your spells go. So next up, we have Deep Spell and Great Deep Spell. Both these spells deal pretty minimal damage, but the real big trade-off for these is that they have a fast cast time, really, really good tracking, like insanely good tracking. So they are very avoidable, but when people aren't paying attention, these things will hit them. And you'll use these primarily for your combo moves, to be honest, to finish off enemies. So these three beginning spells are my favorite combo to put together. So you got Affinity, and then you got Deep Soul, and then Great Deep Soul to follow up with that. So what happens is something along these lines where you go straight up to your enemy, you let that Affinity proc, you're going to cast your Deep Soul and your Great Deep Soul, and just keep hitting that person. As you can see, I did 1200 damage there to our best friend, our favorite mob to deal damage to here. Then of course you just finish them off with a couple deep spells here, Great Deep Soul here, and there you go. Like I said, dark magic and hexes in this game aren't exactly the greatest for capping damage output like you would see in sorcery and pyromancy, but it is a very combo heavy PvP and PvE build, and that's where you'll see the most success in doing this, is stacking those spells together. They have a really low cast speed, slow tracking, but eventually it'll hit them. And when you put them all together, it's really awesome. Now, next up, we've got Dark Edge. Dark Edge is like probably the coolest like melee, like sorcery, fucking whatever next to life hunt scythe, where you hit things and it's super badass, and this thing just sweet. Hits like a truck, super awesome. Hits pretty good for dark magic, I will say, and it just feels so crunchy. And in the terms of Vagabond 86, it's just got that crunch effect, that just major, big old swing. Now, as you guys will notice here, it swings vertically, unlike most other sword-based sorceries and stuff, where all that stuff does hit horizontally. This one's just straight, all vertical. You just swing it, and it pins people down. It's got some pretty serious stagger to it as well, which is awesome. And it looks fucking awesome. It looks very cool. Once again, another great combo move with Affinity. You can also combo this up with Black Flame. I find that it's really effective as well. Now, next up for sorceries, I'm going to briefly cover Pestilent Mercury. You'll probably honestly never use this. The whole idea from using dark magic is to keep your enemies at bay. Now, this can either close you in more or keep them at a better distance or make that area smaller, because it also damages yourself, and that's not the greatest, really. It damages you as you walk through it and such. So it's pretty cool if you need to, once again, kind of enclose someone in a space, but at the same time, too, you want to create more distance between you and your enemy to make those combo moves happen. So when you have something like Pestilent Mercury, it can either work with you or against you. I find it also works pretty good for pressuring people, because you kind of have this shroud of smoke. People can't really see what you're doing behind that when you're setting up those combos, other than like your Affinity, for example. So it kind of just pops out through the smoke, which is pretty sweet. But otherwise, that's not like the only real use I've seen to it. As you guys can see, it's not even doing that much damage, like, whatsoever. So let's just go ahead and finish him with a Dark Edge. You feel me? Oh my god, look at this. Look at this dark magic. Oh my god, hit him with the deep spell. Oh, shit. For all those people that are asking me what it feels like to have 20 Vigor, 20 Endurance, that's what it looks like. So next up, we move on to the Dark Pyromancies, which once again, we're going to swap out the Ring of the Sun's Firstborn to the Witch's Ring, and I'm just going to keep Bellowing Dragoncrest Ring on for now to simulate what it would seem like to use Dark Sorceries and Dark Pyromancies at the same time. So like I said before, you guys want to have your Pyromancy Flame upgraded and available. Don't use the Whitehair Talisman. I mean, you can use it, but, that being said, Pyromancy Flame is going to get you the best damage output when it comes to Dark Pyromancies, as long as you have dark magic enhancing stuff on for gear and whatnot. This thing hits pretty serious. It's great for actually dealing some pretty sweet damage, and it's pretty fast. So right now we're looking at Black Flame. This thing is sweet up close, deals quite a nice chunk of damage, and staggers a little bit as well, as you guys can see there. It's a little bit different in PvP. Something to keep in mind too, these values are different from that PvE and PvP, because I'm wearing Dark Clutch. It's definitely more effective in PvE as well. So Black Flame is really good for applying pressure and showing that you are unpredictable for enemies that are actually good. That being said, it totally catches them off guard, especially if they're like using a short sword or some sort of katana or something like that. Black Flame is your best friend for any type of build that's similar like that, or that is like super meta with like Istok and stuff like that, or any type of short sword, long sword, and stuff like that. So great for applying pressure, of course. Looks super cool. All the dark magic spells look really cool, and Black Flame is just another thing to add to that arsenal. So next up, we got Black Fire Orb, which is another really good Pyromancy to be comboing with Affinity. Probably is going to be your favorite Pyromancy to honestly combo with Affinity. As you guys can see, I'm doing 586 here, which is pretty sweet. Once again, some pretty heavy damage that can be capitalized on even further. On top of that, if you have both Pyromancy rings available and on. Otherwise, 586 is pretty sweet for a dark magic attack once again. Now, the benefit of Black Fire Orb is that it's pretty easy to free aim. A lot of people free aim their Pyromancies, and Black Fire Orb is one of those Pyromancies that can be free aimed in a lot of ways. And the last thing for Pyromancy is the Black Serpent. The Black Serpent isn't all that great, to be honest. It doesn't really deal that much damage. It's much more a utility. It does stagger enemies a little bit, and it does have some tracking to it as well. The coolest thing about it is that it goes up walls. So let's say you're invading in like Grand Archives or something like that. You can shoot that thing right up a wall, and it deals damage, which is pretty sweet. Otherwise, you probably won't really use it. It doesn't have that great of damage or utility to it, other than hitting up walls and dealing a little bit of stagger as well. But as you guys can see, once again, it's like not fantastic. Really, the tracking is pretty sweet on it, but it's not crazy tracking. It's not like the best tracking you've ever seen out of a spell or anything whatsoever, but it's not bad. It's okay. Fitting the theme of like a full Dark Pyromancer or something like that would probably be pretty sweet, but really that's about it. So now we're getting into the miracles for dark casting, and we're going to switch out the rings once again. To simulate this, I'm just going to put on Ring of the Sun's Firstborn again, and just use that for dark miracles here. So the first thing we're going to test out is Gnaw. The nice part about Gnaw is it's kind of a nice trade-off from Deep Soul and Great Deep Soul for both Gnaw and Doris's Gnawing, which actually I'll just run both right now here. It's got a very, actually It's got a pretty slow cast time, which is unfortunate. Not as good of tracking, but it is a little bit heftier and definitely shoots a lot faster. So consider it, like I said, the counterpart to Deep Soul and Great Deep Soul for these two here. And, you know, both Gnaw spells make really good combo moves with affinity, as most other things do, as I've said so before. Doris is gnawing, you know, same thing as Gnaw, just a little bit more powerful. Moves a little slower, of course, and has a bit more cast time to it, but definitely deals some pretty hefty damage, and does build bleed up. So that's another thing to note, is Gnaw and Doris' gnawing does build up bleed, which is really cool as well. So if you're running like a bleed build or some sort of hybrid bleed build, it's pretty helpful to have, to be honest. Once again, you'll use that mostly as an alternative to Deep Soul and Great Deep Soul for Doris' gnawing and Gnaw. Just kind of the miracle alternative to those two there. They do have different cast times, cast lengths, so on and so forth. The build bleed up is quite nice, but they do cost more FP to cast compared to Deep Soul and Great Deep Soul. But like I said, a fantastic alternative to shoot. And now we move on to the Life Hunt Scythe. So personally, what I do for Life Hunt Scythe is I two-hand my Catalyst for miracle casting, and I use Unfaltering Prayer with Sunless Talisman, as you guys can see I'm about to do right here. So then I can't be staggered. Nothing can hit me while I cast that. My hyper armor is activated. I can't get hit by things, or I can be hit by things, but, you know, I'm just going to keep casting my spell like you're going to see right here. Or, no, never mind, maybe not. But, you know, that's really helpful for me, and Life Hunt Scythe with Unfaltering Prayer has gotten me a lot of last hits. People don't expect it to come out. A lot of people don't use Life Hunt Scythe, which is awesome. Otherwise, if you do use it in the offhand without Unfaltering Prayer, as you guys can see, it still does a moderate amount of damage, of course, and is still quite effective. Also gives you some life back, which isn't too bad in duels, but once again, I personally just use it in last hits and stuff like that for a lot of my duels, because a lot of people don't expect Life Hunt Scythe to come out a lot of the times. So, and I like it. I like the way it looks. I think it's a really cool weapon to be using, and like I said, Unfaltering Prayer with it is really effective. Of course, you can't really control the angle that you're hitting things with that, but, you know, it's a great little utility to have for Miracle Dark casting, which is awesome. And that's the conclusion to all the dark spells. So, of course, mix and match them however you guys would like. Like I said, it makes it hard because they are from different casting schools, but otherwise beyond that, they're really effective when you kind of get a pattern down and get those combos going. Use whatever combos work the best for you. Personally, for me, it goes Affinity, Deep Soul, Great Deep Soul, or Dark Edge followed up by Black Flame. Those are some great combos just as an example to show you guys there. And of course, as you guys play this build, you guys will come up with your own casting combos as well, which once again are very crucial to this build. If you guys aren't set up for combo casting with your spells there, definitely set it up so you can just hit that D-pad really quick, switch the next spell, hit the D-pad again, switch the next spell, and be casting that stuff effectively and fast, because dark magic casts very fast, but doesn't deal the most damage. So having those combos ready and available will help you get the optimal amount of damage with dark magic casting. Now, as I mentioned before, too, Steady Chant and Unfaltering Prayer are really fantastic utilities to be using. Steady Chant whenever you can, it gets you an extra 12.5% worth of damage to be hitting with for dark magic. And Unfaltering Prayer gives you hyper armor while you're casting, so it's very helpful stuff. Now, unfortunately for dark pyromancies, you don't really have that alternative to use the weapon skill with. But I guess if you really need to use combustion, then you can use it in the left hand if you need to. Otherwise, I guess the up part of dark pyromancies is that they do hit relatively hard, harder than most dark sorceries and dark miracles. Now, I mentioned this before in my other casting build guides, and the last tip of advice that I have for you guys is just to play smart and time everything. Somebody actually asked me on my Reddit post, how do I actually fight against good people in PvP? And the trick is just to be 2-3 steps ahead of your enemy. Think about how they're playing, think about what they're doing, think about what their next swing is, so you can cast accordingly. And when I say cast accordingly, I mean things such as being able to be unpredictable, running right at them with different types of spells that you're casting as well, because a lot of people don't expect that from a caster, especially one that has 20 Vigor and 20 Endurance to be running right at them. It really throws people off. So if you want to play a successful caster in PvP, you need to think ahead of the game and be as unpredictable as possible when it comes to good players. Know what your next move is, know what their next move is, and know what you're going to do about it. So I'm going to read off the summary that I also wrote up for Reddit here, and that is that dark magic doesn't hit that hard, but makes up for all that through fast casting times, slow and effective homing, and overall great casting combo capabilities. It's a complicated form of casting, but is a viable, unique form of casting playstyle. Dark magic is split between the 3 main spell trees. This is its vice and its strength. Dark magic has a great variety of tools that players can pick from and becomes a lot of fun once the playstyle and combo setups are understood. I would recommend this to anyone looking for a fun casting challenge in PvP and would not recommend it for PvE of any sort. But that being said, of course it is possible to use dark magic for a playthrough, but it's not the easiest thing I've done, making it quite a nice challenge for anyone that needs a nice challenge out there. Overall, this build is made for both veteran casters and newcomers to get a casting challenge out of Dark Souls 3. Of course, it's not as powerful as Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 hex casting and dark magic casting, but it really is its own thing in Dark Souls 3. You just kind of have to play around with it a little bit. And that is how you play a Hexer in Dark Souls 3. So that's all I got to talk about today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide once again with the IM video. I really do appreciate all your guys' support and all the awesome feedback I've been receiving with all of these builds and whatnot. It's really been awesome. If you guys have any other ideas of builds that you want to see or any other unique builds that you'd like to see in this series of IM, so on and so forth, then please let me know and I can see if I can get it done. And another thing, thank you guys so much for 5,000 subscribers. That's awesome. I'm super jacked about having 5,000 subs. You guys are super awesome and I love you all so much. Once again, I really do appreciate the support. Now on to 10,000. Onward to 10,000 subs. Let's get there. So with all that being said and done, take it easy, guys. Have a general good. And as I always say, drop a like for your boy, Goblins. And I'll be back here with more Dark Souls content or Overwatch content shortly. So take it easy. Have a general good. And I'll see you guys later. Peace out!